Welcome back to Men and the City. I wanted to make a quick video about the aging process and defining success as a man. So this video is going to be called Men at 40 and Beyond, Defining Success. So in about a week or so, I will be 40 years old, which I don't have to tell you is an important milestone in the life of any human being, but especially so, I think, for men, because our maturation process takes a lot longer, it seems, than the opposite sex. And that's especially the case in today's modern age, which appears to be, as we've discussed, a transitional period, a period of disruption and upheaval. But even said, success today is an obsession. It is a myopic focus that we are inundated with all day long, every day, 365. I see it on Instagram. I see it on YouTube. It's one of the reasons why I really don't care for social media. It's one of the reasons I was reluctant to start a YouTube channel and start contributing my voice or my content into that medium. Never felt that it was appropriate for the material or the message that I was trying to deliver. But times have changed and I had to adjust. Everything today is scripted, in a sense, in terms of success. I think back to a lot of my peers in high school or my classmates from university, people that I worked with in my 20s in various capacities. And my life has almost certainly taken a very different path, a different road. And no doubt I played a big role in that. I don't believe that you can control your life as much as many people think, but while control is an illusion, decisions matter. And that's going to be, I suppose, the theme of what I'm going to say today. I was looking earlier at a friend of mine at his LinkedIn page. Well, he's not really a friend, but an acquaintance that I've known for a long time. I haven't seen him in a while. But I was curious to look at his LinkedIn profile, which is effectively his CV. And we all judge ourselves based on comparison. It's just natural as a human being. We are social animals. And so we define our success or failure based on the performances of other people. And I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of harm in doing so. However, in looking at his CV and looking at the things that he's done, this guy has played it safe. He's followed the yellow brick road. And he has stayed in that 9-to-5 milieu. And so he went to a very good undergraduate school. He then went to a very good graduate school. He was in the military briefly, then he was in the private sector, and now I think he works for a bank. And by any measure, society would deem him and his life and accomplishments as a success. He has all of those boilerplates, the metrics that society in general, especially in the United States, obsesses over. I'm sure he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, maybe more. I'm sure he has a nice home or homes. I don't know if he's married or not, but that's less important for today's discussion. The question is he successful? And am I a failure, or relative to him, less successful, however you want to view it? And that's a question I think many men today are forced to confront, especially because there has been an explosive gap between those that are successful and those that are unsuccessful, men that are the high value men, as they call them. And I've attacked that term because I don't think it has much substantive meaning to it. I have instead focused on what I call a good man, a man that is invested in society, a man that gives a shit about the world around him. And in some sense, knowing what I know about the corporate world, about the military, and about the necessary sacrifices that it takes to get to that higher level, a lot of those sacrifices demand more than simply your time and your diligence or your hard work. It's not just about that. Much of your success depends anymore on your willingness to capitulate, to accept whatever that institution tells you to accept. And we all know what the boilerplate of that acceptance or that conformity requires anymore, don't we? It's a kind of slow emasculation. And I think many men, many people in general, delude themselves into thinking that by making those concessions, by conforming, that is the recipe for success. And they will look down upon or even condescend to many of us, myself included, who did not make that choice. And by virtue of not making that choice, have not enjoyed the material success that they have. And furthermore, because we live in an age that's so evacuated of any moral compass or spiritual content, those intangibles, that you might say the spiritual nourishment, the self-actualization, they just don't matter anymore. Society, at least again in the West, specifically in the United States, places no value on those things whatsoever. I look at all of the things that I've written, a lot of the videos that I've put forth. The videos are more recent, but I've been writing a long time. I've acted upon many of the things that I believe in for a long time. And monetizing that for anybody, not just for myself, is an extremely laborious process. And in many respects, perhaps in most cases, I don't know, it doesn't happen. Results simply do not come, as many people who embark on a different path discover. But what you come to understand, at least what I've come to understand, is that masculinity, as I said in one of the earliest videos that I made on this channel, is not defined by material acquisition or acquisitiveness, especially when you're manufacturing or consuming the revenue streams of a broken society. And so I think to my former peer, and I imagine all of the various scenarios that he had to confront where he simply had to either compartmentalize or conceal or flat out lie to himself regarding what he was prepared to accept, what he believed in. And he did so in order to get ahead, in order to enrich himself in a material sense, to make more money, to have the house, to have the nice car, so forth and so on. But in the process of doing so, these men who do this, the so-called high-value men, they lose something. I've seen it firsthand. Their masculine spirit dulls over time. They become overly fixated on a lot of irrelevant things. How much money they make, maybe the private collections that they have of various material acquisitions, and a pissing contest in various ways to outcompete other men that have maybe slightly less or slightly more things than they do, or are slightly higher or slightly lower in a company than they are, went to a slightly better or slightly less reputable institution than they did. But something happens to these men when they hit about 40, sometimes it happens at 50 or later. Society calls it a midlife crisis, but that's not really what it is. In my estimation, the midlife crisis is a spiritual recognition that you haven't lived your life focused on the things that you really believed in. That your life isn't really about anything. And these men, by virtue of making these sacrifices and capitulations over years, and remember that climbing to the top of these institutions or these corporations, these structures, is not easy at all. It demands a lot of hard work. Far more hard work than I think a lot of people realize. At the same time, however, they are ultimately serving somebody else's master. They're servicing somebody else's dream. Now that's all fine and good if the actions that you're taking, or the sacrifices that you're making, or the hours that you're working are advancing towards a belief that, or an idea, or an ideal, or a vision that you fundamentally believe in, something that's aligned with your masculine, libidinous energy. But I think we can safely say that for most of these men, today anyway, especially given how perverse and poisonous a lot of these corporate structures are, these hollowed out bureaucracies, that they're not doing that. And so eventually these men, they hit a crisis, and it doesn't really matter how much material success they've had or how much reputational clout they have based on that material success. They feel a sense of hollowness, and they have a crisis. And so what is success if that's not what it is? And furthermore, if their success, material or otherwise, which affords them a better life and an easier life, and in many ways today enables them to have a family, right? Because if you don't have enough money today, it's very difficult to attract a woman, as we know. It's very difficult to sustain relationships. But if that's not success, then what is? Well, I've talked at length on this channel before about men as ideas. Men and women are fundamentally different in many ways. But men, our purpose, our mission is going to vary depending upon that value set, that idea that we become. And that can only crystallize or be realized in your mind over time as you execute that mission. In other words, as you pursue instinctually your passion. You have to pursue the things that you really believe in. And a lot of people say, well, I don't really know, and so they just sort of fall in line. And of course, things like that happen, but more often than not, I don't find that to be the case. What I find to be the case is that people abandon those passions. They think better of it, and they take the safe road. And when you don't take that path, when you disembark, when you diverge, people think that you've lost it, or that you're a failure, or that you're going to suffer. And you do in many ways. I certainly have. But that reminds me of a quote from Joseph Campbell that has always stuck with me, and I think it applies to men in general and should serve as our navigational system to some degree. But he says, "It is by going down into the abyss that you recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure." Another way of saying this, and there's a good book by the same name, is the resistance is the way. When you pursue a different path, when you go your own way, when you disembark based on the things that you really believe in, you do go through a crucible. You do suffer. But that's what men are supposed to do in order to realize the promise of the ideas that are here, that are deep inside of us. And our job is to manifest those ideas, to become those ideas. And everything else emanates from that. Does that mean that your idea is going to make you a millionaire? No, it does not. Does that idea mean that you will have tremendous success in your life? No, it does not mean material success. It doesn't even mean reputational respect. In some cases it means the opposite. But it does mean that you are fulfilling your underlying masculine mission, that you are aligned with your spiritual self, and that ultimately you're learning what this life is all about, which is something more than the corner office and the 401k account and the nice home, so forth and so on. Ultimately, it's about doing what you really believe in. What do I really believe in? I really believe in the neo-masculine movement. I really believe that this spiritual existential crisis that men in particular are facing, and that the West in general are experiencing, demands a call to action. It demands a mass movement of men. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. What comes of that, we cannot know. Control is an illusion, but decisions matter. I can't control the outcome. All I can do is control the input. I don't have a unique insight into the future any more than anybody else does. I speculate just like everybody else does. But what I do know is that I never saw my father go through a midlife crisis. He never had it. Because he did what he believed in. He wanted to be a professional soldier, and that's what he did. He wanted to put his life on the line in combat, and that's what he did. And his whole life has been focused on that mission. And for many years, maybe a decade, that generated no results for him. In fact, you might say it cost him dearly. And certainly my mission has been costly to me and will continue to be so. But it is what I believe in. It is at the core of my being. That's what men are here to do. That is the benchmark of success. And you can feel it. It is a feeling more than anything else, that you're going in the right direction because ultimately you're willing to make the sacrifices to do it. And you let go on that basis. So for those of you who are not in a great spot and you've been through a difficult time and you're wondering what the hell is going on, and understandably, you reflect. You blame yourself. You try to take responsibility because that's what we as men do. But remember that control is an illusion, but decisions matter. All we can do is decide based on our true passions, the ideas that we believe in, and try to become those ideas as best as we can. In so doing, you will find the right path. And that is congruent with your spiritual self, your self-actualization. If you don't do that, and it is a choice, it's your choice, my guess is that you'll regret it. Because even though you may be lavished with wealth and live in luxury, it won't be enough. So in this era of wealth porn and gluttony and greed and materialism, in which all that seems to matter to anybody is how much money you have or how many women flock to you or how nice your car is or what zip code you live in, just remember that that's frankly all irrelevant. Are you doing what you really believe in? Are you pursuing the life course that's deep inside you and manifesting that in the real world? If you're doing that, you'll never have any regrets. You won't have a midlife crisis, no matter how bad things get, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And for my money, my intuition, my foresight tells me that this materialistic age in which we live is about to come to an end. And along with that, the values that underpin that are going to break like glass. And a new realization is coming. A reversion, you might say, to an ethos that's more grounded in humanity and community. And if you're keeping true to your mission and acting out what you believe in, whatever the cost, you will thrive in the times ahead. Stay tuned for more, and we'll talk soon.